Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, let's talk about why fearful avoidants sometimes give up on the relationship but stay. And so, this could be you. This could also be your significant other, and they did this in a previous relationship, to which is why they're even more leaning dismissive and really afraid to get into a relationship because they did this in their previous marriage or relationship and it really scarred them. This is something so many fearful avoidants do, and I'm going to explain why. Many fearful avoidants have a history of staying in unhappy relationships in the form of surrender. This is not the same as dismissive avoidance and anxious preoccupied. Anxious preoccupied, they may stay in unhappy relationships because they're hoping it will change, or they are telling themselves it's better than it is, or they just leave. Dismissive avoidance, they tend to leave. Fearful avoidance, most common with them, they're going to stay. They are unhappy and they don't believe their significant other will change. But sometimes they still love their person, or the love has faded, but they still stay anyways. And why does this happen way more common with fearful avoidance than any other attachment style? At least I've seen it happen much more commonly with fearful avoidance. The first one is their partner is a dismissive avoidant who won't change, and this person is exactly what the fearful avoidant believes they deserve, which is why they're with a person like this. A lot of dismissive avoidants don't change, but some of them do. And fearful avoidants particularly believe, before this dismissive avoidant even was in their orbit or this relationship, they believed people don't change because, they're caregivers and things of that nature. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but they don't believe that people will change. And they believe people are untrustworthy. It's why they keep people at arm's length. So being with a dismissive avoidant partner really reinforces that, and they get to reinforce that maladaptive perspective. That means they don't have to change. To be honest, being with a dismissive avoidant who doesn't change also allows them to not have to change either, and it makes it easier for their avoidant side. Honestly, if a dismissive avoidant doesn't change, they can say, well, the relationship failed because you're avoidant. Nothing to do with me. It's because you're an avoidant, you don't change, and people don't change. And therefore, why should I change? Not that they're saying that, but there's a part of them that thinks, I'm not going to trust anybody. You guys don't change. Why should I be the one that changes? And even if I do change, it's never going to do anything because, you're not going to change. And some fearful avoidants actually do try to change, but they don't try. A lot of them try to change their anxious side, but a lot of them do not fix their avoidant side. And the avoidant side is more likely the one that doesn't trust people, right? They don't say, okay, and a lot of them are working on it, but it's still harder. They don't say this person is somebody who maybe doesn't change because they don't understand the value of it. Or is there any way I can communicate and try and fix that? Anxious preoccupied does that way more. Fearful avoidance, they try and they give love, but sometimes they're like, this isn't working. Even if the dismissive avoidance shows a little bit of signs of change, they're like, what, this really isn't working. I'm just never going to ask them for anything again. I don't trust them. What's the point? How about I just not say anything? I'm just going to be detached. I'll still be in the relationship, but I won't be in it in heart. And the interesting part is dismissive avoidance feel like this means that they've been accepted and loved. And so this relationship can last like an entire lifetime, because the fearful avoidance says, okay, I don't believe that you're ever going to change. So I'm just going to be not here, not emotionally, available in this marriage relationship, but I'm going to be here physically. And the dismissive avoidance says, oh, I succeeded. I got a relationship. This person's not leaving me. I must be lovable. I must be able and capable of loving. And interesting enough, sometimes that heals a dismissive avoidant, but we'll talk about that another day. And so that dismissive avoidant who doesn't change, they don't get the opportunity to prove to the fearful avoidant that they love this person, because the fearful avoidant doesn't give any more opportunity. And so they stay, fearful avoidance, sometimes they like this because somewhere subconsciously they're in control by doing this. By believing the fearful dismissive avoidant won't change, and even if they never do, by staying in that relationship, somewhere they're in control because they can leave when they want to, because they somewhere know the dismissive avoidant is probably not going to leave in these particular circumstances. If anyone's going to leave, it's going to be the fearful avoidant, and they like that feeling. It makes them feel like they're not going to be abandoned, so it helps their anxious side, but it also helps their dismissive side because they're the one in control. The next one is that their partner or ex had a personality disorder that was untreated, and it led them to become even more untrusting, and lean more dismissive later in life. And so now they push away anyone who actually cares. So in their first relationship, why did they stay if they were unhappy? That untreated personality disorder, in their mind, they almost felt like it was familiar, and it made them realize, it almost made them feel, it's going to sound a little bad, but it's partly true. It made them feel like they were the less broken one. And so they stayed because they were able to validate their fears of being broken and having a broken childhood. By being with someone who has a personality disorder, even if they were really unhappy, it made them validate that, but it broke them so much because these relationships usually end, if I'm being honest, if they don't get treated, either of them. Now that's their ex and they gave them everything, and now they don't trust anybody anymore. And now this fearful avoidant won't commit to you or whoever, and that's the reason why. The next one is they had at least one caregiver who was abusive, and at that time they couldn't leave, and so they just coped and surrendered, and so they just believe that that's what you're supposed to do in life. Like, this is probably the most important one. I should have put this one first. They just bring this into every relationship because they just feel like that. That's it. That's what they believe relationships are. And they don't feel like they're going to get their needs met. They're used to getting their needs met. They don't, and even when their partner doesn't show signs of disinterest or abuse, they still do this sometimes. They just act like the relationship's not going to give them anything, and they don't even say what they want. And they become resentful almost for, I shouldn't say no reason, but not exactly the reason that their partner's not giving them a reason fully to be resentful, but they put that resentment from their childhood onto their partner because they believe that all relationships are going to be exactly like that. The next one is unhappiness feels safer because it shields them from disappointment. So even if they could be happy, they just rather feel even if they feel happy, they'd rather just feel unhappy because it makes them feel like they're able to be in control and it helps them to be cautious. So even if their relationship is pretty good, they're just gonna still give up and just shut down and believe that it's going to end someday. Not all of you guys do that. If you're a fearful avoidant, I'm not saying all of you do this. I'm just saying it's a pattern I see sometimes. And the last one is many of them don't put much emphasis on happiness. This is because of trauma. They are the only attachment style that I see does this more frequent than, like, fearful avoidants do this the most among all attachment styles. I think a couple of them do this as well, but much more common with fearful avoidants, they just don't put emphasis on happiness, like their own happiness or your happiness, honestly. And it's because of trauma. And so them being unhappy is not necessarily a reason for them to leave. Like, they've been unhappy their whole life, some of them. They just think this is a state of reality. And so if this is you, healing and processing these things in therapy can really help. Let's go ahead and summarize and we'll wrap it up. Their partner is dismissive avoidant and won't change. And so they feel like that's a very comfortable situation. It's like a familiar setting. The next one is partner has a personality disorder that won't change, and that's also a familiar setting. The third one is their caregiver was abusive, and they had to surrender. They couldn't leave, and so they just operate that's the way it's supposed to be. The fourth one is they believe unhappiness is just easier to control, it's safer than being happy. And the fifth one is they don't put emphasis on happiness. That's not enough of a reason for them to leave because they never got to, some of them hasn't really experienced real happiness, if I'm being honest. And so these are some of the reasons why fearful avoidants give up but still stay. This is a very specific case. That doesn't mean your fearful avoidant isn't happy with you and that's why they're staying. I'm not saying that. These are like very, very specific cases. But if anyone can relate to any of these, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying all fearful avoidants are like this. I'm just saying fearful avoidants do this more than other attachment styles. I hope this video was helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.